Hi, Sue here from Mystic Matters. Thank you for joining me. Okay, the subject I'm going to deal with today on my Exploring Popular Opinion is the class system. Now, every country, to my knowledge, has got a class system. Here in the UK, it's like the aristocracy, the upper class, middle class, lower class. You can go from the lower class up to the upper class by getting money. But aristocracy is like something you have to be born into and maybe marry into. I mean, I'm not an expert on the class system, but that's kind of my understanding of it. And I know it's the haves and have-nots in many cases. So I want to have a look. I will say that my opinion doesn't come into any of the readings I do in this series. This is purely what the cards are saying and my interpretation of them. And they are for entertainment purposes only. I use my pendulum, do a deeper dive, and my pendulum said, okay, give me a yes, it's side to side. Give me a no, it's circular motion, and maybe is backwards and forwards. So that's how my pendulum speaks to me. Okay, I'm going to take 10 cards, and this is for the class system in all countries all around the world. And it's not about the people, it's about the energy behind the system. Because people come and go. Okay, I've had a card flip out, so I always read them when they do. And this is about making plans for the future, and it's about intellectual, having new ideas. So it could be the whole class system needs to come under review. So people have a few new ideas about how to move forward, maybe on a more equal basis. All right. I think I've shuffled enough. So let's oh, that's interesting. All right. The reason I said that it's interesting and why I love the cards are the very first card to fall out was the one that fell out or kind of flipped out of the deck when I was shuffling. And this is about thinking about new ideas, but also not letting other people get in the way of our ideas. So it's often the case, I think there's people who are born into privilege, people are born into money, and they don't have any idea of how the other classes live. There's a kind of disconnect, and for the lower classes, it's like there's a glass ceiling. You know, you can't get above that unless you get money in some way. So this is about really thinking about the class system, how it works, and how things can become more equal. And there will be resistance, especially from the people who are the privileged ones, because they don't want things to change. There's an element of power in having money or status, because there is kind of sometimes a belief system that you know, if you have money, you're successful. That's not always the case. It depends on how you get your money, doesn't it, really? And if you inherited it, what's the, you know, where's the success in that? So this is have people wanting to think in a new way about this whole class system, because there's the old adage, everyone is born equal. I think it's from 1984, you know, by George Orwell. Everyone's born equal, but some are born more equal than others. And this is something that really people are thinking about and wanting to make a change. The challenge around that is the emotions. There's a lot of emotional content or input around these class systems. People are very much tied into the class they've been born into. That's who their friends are and things. So there is a lot of emotional content about this, and the feeling of a lot of vulnerability as well. And if you're at the top of the ladder, it's like you don't have to work so hard. And I'm generalizing because I know that there are people at the top of the ladder who work really very hard, and they do great things. So this isn't a kind of blanket statement or any negativity. It's just the fact that if you don't have to worry about where your next meal comes from, then you don't have to. Then you can take a day off. It's not a big deal. But when you don't have money or influence, then it's living really at the basics of life. And how can you really go after your dreams and achieve your dreams when you don't know if you're going to be able to feed your family? It becomes all about survival, and that's the major issue with this. It's all about the survival, and major problem. Everything has to be dealt with a level of tact and diplomacy. For instance, just because someone has money or is born into the aristocracy through accident of birth doesn't mean that they are automatically kind of unsensitive. It takes it's individuals, and it's important that to challenge the class system, people need to not be in awe of it, because each one of us is a human being. We've all come into this earth in more or less similar ways, and we're born into certain families, but we shouldn't let that define us. Just because we were born into what would be called a lower class family doesn't mean we can't achieve our dreams. And the class system, in fact, there's this feeling of it's about achievement, and sometimes it's more difficult when you're at the top to achieve, because there's sometimes an expectation of you where there wouldn't be so much in a different class system. So each of them has their own challenges that people can overcome, and it's about actually each of us taking charge of our own lives and deciding what we want. Some people don't money's not that important to them, so they're not bothered about kind of climbing ladders. But everybody is here for a particular purpose, and it shouldn't be hampered by anything to do with a class system. People should be able to have their dreams and achieve without having additional blockages put in the way, like with marriage and things like that. Oh, you can't marry that person because they're in a different class. And things like that. It comes into so many things, and it can be very disruptive because of that. It becomes tradition, and that's why there's some overhauling of the system that's needed. See, the motivation here is about money and resources. It's like people are trying to get out of the lower classes by getting enough money and resources in order to make it up the ladder. But sometimes it's made so difficult that people get tempted to maybe get the money and resources illegally, because they have so many obstacles in their path that it promotes crime, because crime is the only way of getting your needs met. And again, generalization here, but that's the kind of energy about this. It's all about the money and the resources. And I think that's also what the class system can actually tie us into. So it's more about improving. There's a feeling that unless you've got money, people aren't going to listen to you. You can't get your businesses off the ground. You can't get a bank loan. You can get a bank loan if you've got money, but you can't get one if you haven't got money. It's that kind of thing. So money and resources has become very much a part, and it could always have been a part of the class system. Again, the haves and the have-nots, and it's much more difficult for lower class people to achieve their dreams, or people that have been born into the lower class. But because the money and resources they need to move forward isn't always available. We started off here, and it's like this is the past, and it's about not listening to other people and feeling very, very solitary. This is a strange card. I'm feeling very solitary. It's like, all right, people don't feel they have access to everybody, because it's not just a class system about wealth and about privilege. That's not what it is. There's also this other class system that's been built into the various ways people want to live. It can be about LGBTQ, and then you've got the artists, and then you've got the bankers, and you've got these various classes within classes where everybody becomes separated, and and feeling that other people won't listen. They can't, as in, think of an example. Somebody that is, looking at they're in the financial industry, you know, and then there's somebody else who is a musician. There's this lack of language. I think it's about the lack of kind of commonality. And I think this is something that separates us. So rather than different people in different communities all getting together, and different people in different classes all getting together and talking to each other to find out what their experience of life is. That is, and I think I've seen things on YouTube, I think, about people from different classes kind of swapping homes and things like that. I don't tend to watch much of that, but there's a lot of misunderstandings, and the feeling of solitude here is that feeling that you can't cross the line because people won't understand you. But there's different issues that are common to the human race, and it's important that we get to know everybody rather than just stick with our own. And that's where the class system goes deeper than just money and privilege. It is about people feeling that they don't have any common ground with other people, and then just not even trying. They just put it down as said, and that means you feel quite lonely because you're not expanding. You don't expand unless you talk to people who might not have your knowledge or your particular way of thinking. That's how we learn, isn't it? In the near future, people are going to be asked to make a willing sacrifice of something for something better. And for me, it's well, from what I'm reading with the cards here, is a sacrifice of this whole them and us scenario, which these different class systems fall into. It's, do I stay feeling better than I feel I'm superior to one lot of people, but but I'm inferior to another. This is where, the problems and the self-esteem and all that kind of comes from. It's this feeling of, I can't approach that person because, I'm not big enough, or I'm not important enough. Things like that. It's the them and us. So we're needing to look at what we're prepared to sacrifice, and it's a willing sacrifice. We're not going to be forced into this. We can stay exactly where we are in our own particular system. We're not forced to make changes if we don't want to. But this is going to come up because we will have a better future, more inclusion going forward. And this here backs it up. It's like, do we stay with what we have or put our energies into something else? So I think this whole class system is really coming under scrutiny, but it needs to be dealt with tact and diplomacy, and people treated as individuals. But it is coming under review because people aren't prepared to abide by it for that much longer. This is a process. It's not going to kind of happen tomorrow, obviously, but in the next maybe 6 years or so, when these class systems will start to disappear, they won't be as important. There'll be more unity there'll be more people getting together because of their abilities rather than, how much, how much influence or who they know. Become a lot fairer. What people are seeing is that it's going to take a little while because we get small rewards for the efforts we're making. Because there's people in all classes that just want to let it stay the way it is because they feel safe and secure, knowing who they are, where they are, and not having ideas above their station or below their station. So it is a lot of a mindset, and some people are very comfortable and they don't want to get shunted into to another way of living. They're quite happy with what they're doing. So it's small rewards for efforts people are making. And some people will never change, and that is completely their right. And if how they're living is making them happy, then that is absolutely best thing for them. But there is going to be a gradual chipping away of this whole idea of some people being kind of superior to others. And what is really, this is in the hopes and fears, is about jumping off the cliff into the unknown, coming out of your comfort zones and trying to deciding, where do I want to go now? I don't know. It's like a leap of faith. It's like I jump off this cliff. I don't have a clue where, even if there is a bottom, but I'm going to jump off anyway because I need to come out of my comfort zones because I can't progress where I am. I'm just, I know there's a saying something about life exists beyond our comfort zones or something like that. And this is where people are coming from. I think these class systems are gradually going to get dissolved. Obviously, different places, different time frames, and it depends on how embedded they are as well. At the end of the day, it's like we're kind of very stuck between a rock and a hard place here, and whichever way we turn, somebody's going to be upset. So there's going to be conflict around it. But this is really not it's not a major arcana. It's individuals feeling the conflict of being pushed out of their comfort zones. Because if people within your family or friends, things start changing, it's going to impact you one way or another. And so it's not going to be without conflict. But I do feel from what these cards are saying to me here that money, power, influence isn't going to be as revered as it has been, that the class systems that we've built up over the generations are gradually going to be chipped away as people want a more equal life and not be subservient to others. It comes from a place of kind of loneliness as well, and people not being able to connect with the people that they really should be connecting with due to kind of barriers. And people going forward, they don't want these barriers. It's time for that to change, and people are going to be changing. But as I said, not an overnight thing, but I do see the class systems gradually disintegrating and becoming less relevant. So I hope that's been of help. I found it's an interesting one. I didn't know what the cards were going to tell me. Okay, I hope you're enjoying this series so far, and see you soon. Bye.